Yeah.
So funny.
One more drink.
There's vodka in there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you all ready?
Ready? The shadow of a debater speaks.
Our world is in excess. Everywhere, everything is excessively good and factual. Every person smart and free. Every event predictable and comparable.
Our world is in excess.
Debate has become an excessive game with fictional rules to be found nowhere, written nowhere, with referent nowhere, except in the virtual space of the modern framework debate. Modern debate practices have focused heavily on a narrow understanding of topicality that takes so many assumptions for granted, like timeliness, reality, competition, fair division of ground, and so on. Debaters have attempted to make the resolution reveal itself fully, and it has responded in a dual way.
On the one hand, the resolution seems to have a meaning.
Giving meaning makes objects strike a pose, and things themselves begin to strike a pose in the light of meaning as soon as they feel the gaze of the subject upon them.
And yet, at the same time, we've decided all the things a resolution can say to us at the beginning of the year with our topicality and framework arguments. We forget that the resolution merely plays the role of a policy discussion, but that the image of the resolution speaks with much more content than simply policy debate.
For its content to affect us, the image must exist by itself. It must impose its original language on us. For there to be a transference onto the real, there must be a countertransference onto the image, and that countertransference must be resolved.
Everything in us crystallizes negatively before the material imagining of our presence.
And the same is surely true for the resolution and for the debate community. Every ballot that is cast on a framework or on T,
Every attempt to materially imagine debate or the resolution.
only creates a countertransfer of all of our faulty opinions back onto the objects themselves.
No shit, Hallie. As I remember from our practice rounds from the past 2 years, your only answer to the K is that I was being unpredictable and not talking about the topic.
Whatever, Obi. What's bullshit is to have an argument with me in a speech that you wrote in the first place.
Meh, objects always get their revenge.
Strange that our supposed community is one of the only ones which devalues the unexpected or unpredictable.
Can I get a what for Jesus?
We value the mainstream, the common, what everyone is able and willing to do.
No thanks.
There is one correct way to think about the topic, and that's policy. To our community, the resolution is about the United States Supreme Court overturning one of its previous legal decisions that affected the U.S. court system, and now many will attempt to transfer their idea back onto the resolution in an act of finality.
Of putting an end to the resolution.
All of these processes
Framework, topicality, voting for these arguments.
tend toward unification, one debate style, one topic, one topical voice, one resolution, one way to read the resolution. Our entire system, both technical and mental, tends towards oneness, identity, and totality at the cost of an extraordinary simplification. Any systems that achieves this even virtual totalization either automatically fractures or duplicates itself into infinity in a simulacrum of itself. Everything that comes close to its definitive formula or its absolute potency can only repeat itself indefinitely or produce a monstrous double, whether it be terrorism or clones.
Our current model of evolutionary debate is beginning to threaten its own space in our symbolic universe. It's running the threat of eliminating its double. Everything in the world is governed by some symbolic rules, one of which is the rule of gift giving.
There's nothing interactive in the antagonistic process of reversibility and becoming. Life and the world are not interactive. Life isn't a question and answer session or a video game. Interactivity is a gigantic mythology in which otherness is lost in feedback. The only rule, as everywhere else, is the dual rule of gift and countergift.
What we are given, we must return with something equal or greater. And yet, our debate world has lost its double.
He who has lost his shadow is merely the shadow of himself.
In an attempt to expunge its double,
Those untopical, unpredictable cheaters.
from debate, the opposite effects have been produced, and debate is now merely its own shadow. Fairness, education, equality, everything debate is supposed to stand for is now a gigantic, obscene mockery of itself.
Every process growing exponentially generates a barrier. The speed barrier, the information barrier, the virtual barrier. And that barrier is insuperable. Every exponential form leads to the critical threshold at which the process reverses its effects. The accumulation of the signs of truth produce an irresistible effect of uncertainty. In this way, the passage from the true to the false, from the real to the simulacrum, from good to evil is like a critical mass effect, a non-dialectical logic, a fateful logic of excess.
Wow, Hallie, it looks like you've finally become the medium for your doppelganger form.
Hey, I always wanted to. I was just too busy being a debater to see all the possibilities of debating the resolution. It's not easy for people to see the possibilities of debate when the only thing they're taught to think about debate is how other people do it and have done it before them.
We are taught only the Apollonian art of perfecting the one current style and approach to debate. The whole other side, the Dionysian experience of new approaches or readings of debate and the topic, are shunned for suspect reasons like predictability. The whole metaphysical system that we bring into debate rounds presumes so much about the human and our relationship to the world.
Whether we realize it or not, most of us think about the world in metaphysical terms and categories that imply permanence and are undergirded by ideas of linearity. We think we're in a better world than the one that existed 2,000 years ago. We call it progress. Debate itself is advancing and has advanced beyond things like the non-competitive counterplan and...
After a brief scary period ushered in by the Shanahanigans of identity politics and performance,
we have finally adopted a strategy of containment for thinking about the resolution.
critiques on the negative.
Debaters and debate coaches love to talk about the debate community as an object of knowledge, which mandates that the community not move while we discuss it.
But debate and debaters are always moving. There's no community that can actually be found anywhere except in the space of the virtual.
We must rethink our world outside of linearity and bring into question our assumptions that have been built off a linear understanding of where we are going as debaters in a theoretical debate community.
We must begin to think the world in the context of reversibility and becoming.
The inner workings of our limitlessly changing world.
Debate itself is always changing as well. From the beginning to the end of the year, we talk about different cases, allow different amounts of deviation from topicality.
And these depend much more on social forces like bare division of ground than anything internal to the grammatical workings of the topic. The debate resolution will never be the same at the beginning as the end of the year. It tires of striking the same pose. Debate will not develop in just one way or another. It will sporadically take on unpredictable characteristics, such as Bart's terrorist arguments of recent lore.
The sovereign perspective sees the eternally changing nature of the world as a process of becoming. Everything becomes.
Things don't become themselves or identify with themselves.
The will, the self, the identity, all these things must be overcome.
Everything simply becomes. Let us take up this process of becoming and debate.
Wait a minute, Hallie. The resolution doesn't change throughout the year. We have each resolution for one whole year, and then we decide on another.
Ha ha, silly douchebag. You don't understand a thing about becoming. You assume that yourself is something that is a solid, self-sustaining substance of the universe. No, you are only a host of different symbolic forms.
These forms being much more like the real material of the universe, the agency center of action. But this all doesn't sound right, Hallie.
It wouldn't sound right to you because you keep trying to make it right. The very way that you think about debate centers around representation, the flow to make sense of it all, and making the world better. God forbid debaters stand up and give a 9-minute presentation and be evaluated on its persuasive qualities by a judge who has to interpret what happened. And God does forbid it, God in the form of the good or the totalizing rules of our debate game. What I call interpretation, others call judge intervention. But there's no decision without intervention, and no intervention which is greater or less than any other decision. At the end of the round, you'll simply vote.
Existence precedes essence, which includes debate and its rules as well.
Our world is perfect.
Perfect.
Most perfect in its operations of duality, enables inevitable transparency and the long-term failure of any totalizing system. Our world, even our debate world, is itself intelligent, a veritable macrocosmos of the human. Reversibility of the self and the world. Everything happens in the world of the self. This self, within which everything unfolds, resembles in this regard the cosmos of physics, to which the self also belongs, by which that cosmos appeared mentally in our representation. So the circle is complete.
The fatal mistake of our community to this point is that we believe that our knowledge exists outside of the world.
Wrong. We ourselves are part of the world. When we think about the world is thinking about us. Our knowledge comes from the other. Our knowledge is part of the world in its profound illusoriness. The question of whether there is an objective reality does not even arise. The intelligence of the world is the intelligence of the world that thinks us. It is the object which thinks us, and which sometimes thinks better than we do and quicker than we do, which thinks us before we have thought it.
Debate is thinking about us.
If science is right and the stock of substances in the universe can be created or destroyed, the knowledge itself cannot simply be created by us. All different kinds of knowledges exist in the world and are always searching for embodiment.
As always, all claims to knowledge are just perspectives on things. But why do we call a desk a desk? Perhaps that's what the desk thinks of us.
There is too much information, too much meaning, too much immaterial data for the bodies that are left, too much gray matter for the living substance that remains, to the point where the situation is no longer bodies in search of a soul, but of innumerable souls in search of a body, or an incalculable knowledge in search of a knowing subject.
We have reached the terminal state of knowledge.
We've debated the world to the point of its exhaustion, and yet knowledge is meaningless. It isn't about the world. Our knowledge is a substance produced and secreted by the world, by the universe.
My style of debate comes from debate itself.
If one did not look at the world with the world's eyes, the world already in one's own gaze, it falls apart into meaningless details that live as sadly far apart from each other as the stars in the night sky.
Seeing what the resolution gives us.
Imminent reversibility of the courts, of rights, and of debate. The eyes of the resolution sees a world that overturns itself, or an institution turns against itself, or any total system turns against itself.
We are debate's natural defense mechanism.
Debate sees itself at a certain terminal state in history with two opposing forces, to continue to replicate itself by being predictable or to produce a monstrous version of itself.
To open onto its opposite.
It's not a question of whether it will happen, it already has happened. That whole moralizing impulse to question is bound up with the subjective logic of the debater that thinks that they can know the world, or even what's best for the debate activity.
Debate runs itself.
When Shanahan and some of those other debate crazies talk about answering calls from the resolution, they really mean it. Through our encounters with others, which are fated by debate itself, we encounter new arguments and styles and are seduced into changing ourselves. There is no freedom here, and certainly no choice. Hark, the one in C speaks.
But we can't debate against you. You don't affirm the topic. That's unfair and unpredictable.
Since debaters like to beat live horses, we'll beat a dead one. Really, all this objection is saying is that there's no reason for us to have the resolution or to be affirmative. And that's what we're going to go for as our offense. Our argument makes sense.
It makes a dual sense.
Everything which offends against duality, which is the fundamental rule, everything which aims to be integral, leads to disintegration through the violent resurgence of duality, or conformity with the principle of evil, whichever you prefer. It is duality and reversibility which everywhere govern the principle of evil. It is duality liquidated everywhere, conjured away by all possible means, that restores an absence and an emptiness that are generally submerged by a total presence. It is duality that fractures integral reality, that smashes every unitary or totalitarian system.
Which one of you am I cross-sexing?
I mean, it's college, so probably both, but how
Okay,
really
in your interpretation of debate, is there any restriction on what the affirmative can do?
No.
Your last argument is that there's no reason why we should go.
Hold on, the restriction we want to make clear is it's in terms of content is what our 1AC is about. We should stop excluding content.
I don't know what that means.
We should stop excluding certain types of knowledge.
Should an affirmative have to do, can they do whatever they want, or should there be a prescribed notion of what an affirmative has to be able to do, and then they can talk about whatever they want besides that?
There is a resolution, but we say that the resolution has so many different meanings that we should just embrace the fact that the resolution has so many meanings to the point where we think it has no meaning. And all of those should be embraced.
Okay.
All those different knowledges, all those different content.
After this minute of you answering this question, I'm going to take your answer to be no, that an affirmative can basically do whatever they want, even if there is a resolution, right?
It depends on what you mean.
I mean, I don't understand the question.
You need to ask a specific question. Can an affirmative do something like this? Because you're asking questions that might involve style or breaking the rules of debate.
I want to know, can the Supreme Court overrule Roe in your interpretation of debate? It's not on the topic.
I mean, sure, yeah.
Can I watch a movie tonight?
Yeah, you can watch a movie tonight if you want to.
Can I be an affirmative that says my favorite movie is Field of Dreams?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I mean, you probably aren't going to win that. I mean, you might not win that many. You probably aren't going to win that many rounds if that's your art, because that's a hot art. But yeah, you can do that.
It's possible to go negative against that, because I will win a 100% truth claim that my favorite movie is in fact Field of Dreams.
Right, and I'll probably win. That's not a reason to vote affirmative, and you'd probably lose. So.
Well, interestingly enough, why is that not a reason to vote affirmative, and overruling Roe is?
Say the question again?
If it's all about finding these truth claims, then why is it that
finding truth claims?
No, we do not advocate the finding of truth claims.
Not advocating finding truth claims, but why would you vote affirmative if you didn't have some truth claim advocated by the affirmative?
Because we don't want to produce truth. There is an overabundance of truth. There is an overabundance of meaning in debate right now. That is terrible. That will lead to the collapse of debate.
Explain to me why an affirmative could overrule Roe, but an affirmative could not say my favorite movie is.
No, you can. You can say no. You can do that.
So why does the first one win and the second one doesn't?
Because the second one's a really shitty argument.
No, it's not that they just lose. It will be debated out.
That you have no possibility.
Brinker, man, it would be debated out in the round.
I would probably go for Field of Dreams bad.
Well, that doesn't answer the argument.
Yeah, it does. If your favorite movie
could still be my favorite movie.
Dude, this would be how shitty that round would be, which is why the act would probably lose, because this is dumb.
All right, I devote a pretty large portion of my life, and so does Jennings, to topic-specific education and research.
Sure, so do I. Like I said, we've gone for a counterplan every round this tournament.
Hold on. Why is that education meaningless?
You can do all your education shit that you want. You should cut cards in your spare time. I love to cut cards. I like to do that in my spare time.
We think it's meaningless, but good. Meaninglessness is great. We need to inhabit and love meaninglessness because it's not the end point. Our knowledge about the world isn't all we need.
It's not like I cut cards and say, oh, Khalazad's so smart. I find the card and I'm just like, oh, this is fun.